afternoon and welcome to Biztech's Asian Midday Market Watch, powered by Rajhi Bank, Malaysia. Our guest today is Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank, and he's coming to us out of Singapore. Vishnu, as always, great to have you on the Mondays.
Pleasure is mine, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we get your insights, let's take a look at how crypto markets are performing, and then we'll look at how regional stock markets are performing. We'll start with Bitcoin, which is now at 21,269.4. It's up 0.07%. Ethereum is at 1,405.57. It's up 4%. Now, looking across the regional equity markets, Japan is closed today for a public holiday. So we start with the Straits Times Index on the SGX, which is up 0.56%. Across the region, we've got the KLSE, which is up 0.04%. Shanghai is up 1.47%. The ASX is up 1.06%. The Hang Seng is up 2.62%. Rounding up the numbers, we've got the Kospi, which is up 1.83%. Vishnu, it's a sea of green. Tell us why.
Well, it does look like markets have come back a little bit. They're buying the dips after last week's sell-off when the fears of a 100 basis point Fed hike was running high. This is in part due to the fact that they've seen some of the other data points giving some relief in terms of the Fed not getting overly aggressive. We also had a comment from Citibank that not much has changed in their view, so maybe downplaying some of those recession risks. But the thing to bear in mind here is the situation remains really fluid as we get into the ECB and BOJ meetings this week and await the July FOMC, the Fed policy meeting mid of next week. And that means that we should be braced for more volatility as expectations remain, as usual, very fluid with a bit of a hawkish bias.
And you've got some charts to illustrate some key trends.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we thought about is whether the stress in the markets is pretty high or not, because if you just read the headlines, you get to understand that rupee is close to record lows, Thai baht is at multi-year lows. So we want to see to what extent some of these sell-offs can turn into the crisis kind of situation or FX market crisis. And so what we did is we started a lot of these stress or crisis periods right back from Asia financial crisis to the global financial crisis in purple, and then you've got your 2015 big sell-off when China started selling off, and we also have the taper tantrums of the 2013s, and we have tracked how far down Asian currencies have come. The big takeaway here is the good news is even though you may read about record lows here and there, no need to panic. Panic is overblown because you can see clearly the currencies are not selling off to the extent of the AFC or the GFC, but stress levels are similar to the taper tremors of 2013 as well as the 2015 China sell-off, which tended to be a bit more prolonged. So one takeaway here is that we probably want to watch this closely, and we should not discount further stress in the markets in coming months. And so these are the two things to bear in mind in terms of prolonged volatility in the markets.
Now, Vishnu, one of the key things that worries a lot of investors in ASEAN as well, obviously, you've just highlighted that whole risk towards currencies and contagion. What's your view in some specific, and you've mentioned the Thai baht at its record lows. The ringgit is also about to test its record lows. Which other currencies do you think that seem to be under stress and perhaps we shouldn't worry about or should worry about?
Well, in terms of currencies under stress, with respect to, let's look at it two ways. One is in terms of levels. If you're looking at close to record low levels or multi-year low levels, you just touched on the Thai baht, ringgit. We also have the Indian rupee, and to some extent the Philippine peso is also continues to be under pressure, especially if oil prices remain sticky and food inflation continues to be a problem. Usually these things send inflation higher and the currency lower. So these are the things we want to watch for. An outlier this time, not playing to the usual tune, is the Indonesian rupiah, which is holding up better than it has historically, but we warn against complacency here. Last week we had some surprise central bank moves, including the Philippine central bank that did a 75 basis point intermeeting move. And so that tells us about the pressures and the stress building up when it comes to market stability. What do we not need to be concerned about? At this point, I think it would be reckless of me to suggest that we can not be concerned, or we can just glaze past these things. So for now, I think we need to be watchful, but there's no need to panic just yet. We have seen these down cycles, and I think the key issue here is to keep an eye on where inflation is headed, exactly what the Fed is doing, and how domestic markets are holding up, particularly with monetary policy adjustments, and the ability to deal with very, very large price shocks, whether it's fuel or food.
Now, the other thing that is now screaming in terms of risk and risk of contagion is crypto markets. So we've just had Celsius filing for bankruptcy. It's down to 167 million cash on hand, but it owes its users around 4.7 billion. And there's about a 1.2 billion hole in its balance sheet. Now, looking at now what we know in terms of the fact that the whole crypto market seems to be very, very interconnected, is there a risk that the troubles in the crypto markets will spill over to the real economy?
I think that's certainly a risk that we cannot discount, because it's been quite difficult to gauge to what extent the traditional asset managers and holders of investments have gotten into the crypto space. That in the last couple of years in particular, there was this fear of missing out, and so getting into this space. But by and large, we think a lot of them have a lot of traditional markets and asset managers have got a good suite of investments, and so are fairly hedged. So the risk of a crypto market meltdown spilling over very broadly in and of itself, in isolation, is not large. However, if it coincides with, as it tends to sometimes, with huge stress in the Fed, so on and so forth, then one can feed off the other. But for now, the concentrated crypto space continues to look vulnerable, as I think investors are looking to hold more cash in US dollar terms.
Now, as always, Vishnu, thank you very much for your insights, and thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Brian. Thanks for having me.
We've been speaking to Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank, on Biztech's Asian Midday Market Watch, powered by Rajhi Bank, Malaysia. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video and podcast will be on our various platforms, as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.